program and export controls. And the committee has yet to receive the FY26 NOAA spending plan, which was due over a month ago. There's obviously a pattern here, failure to respond to basic inquiries, and that means rather than only look forward, we will have to revisit some of the issues that could have been addressed earlier. With regard to the fiscal year 27 budget plan before us today, it is like the rerun of a bad movie. Last year, you proposed eliminating the Economic Development Administration, the Minority Business Development Agency, and the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. You also proposed last year slashing funding for the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the International Trade Administration. Congress rejected those proposals then on a bipartisan basis because they would have undermined the very economic competitiveness and innovation this administration claims to champion. So what does the fiscal year 27 budget proposal do? The same thing you proposed last year. EDA proposed to be eliminated. MBDA eliminated. Maryland, the Manufacturing Extension Program eliminated. NIST cut by 54%. NOAA cut by 27%. ITA cut by 25%, even as the trade enforcement caseload is skyrocketing. These proposed cuts to important economic development programs come as consumer sentiment has fallen to 47.6%, the lowest reading in the 74-year history of the University of Michigan survey, lower than the worst of the Great Recession, lower than the worst of the post-COVID inflation crisis. These proposed cuts arrive as inflation just hit 3.3%, the highest level in 2 years, and gas prices are way up. GDP growth in the fourth quarter of last year came in at just 0.5%. And on trade, the illegal tariffs cost the American people $166 billion, estimated to mean $1,700 on average per American family, and they haven't gotten their money back. So, Mr. Secretary, you would think that we would see a budget.
Sitting Cabinet Secretary get asked, on the record, why his own family's firm ended up on the other side of a $1.6 billion government deal, and his answer was, "I'll take another look." Not, "Here are the documents." Not, "Here's the timeline." Just a promise, again, from a man who's already broken that promise twice. That's the pattern. 4 separate letters. 4 separate silences. A budget hearing where the Secretary of Commerce came ready to talk about semiconductor investment numbers, but not ready to explain why USA Rare Earth went from under $100,000 in federal contracts to a $1.6 billion federal stake the same week. Cantor Fitzgerald, his former firm, now run by his own sons, brokered $1.5 billion in private funding for that exact company. Accountability doesn't happen by accident. It happens because senators like Chris Van Hollen keep asking the same question until someone in power has to answer it on camera, in public, where they can't hide behind a press release. That only works if people are watching. That only works if this clip doesn't just disappear into the feed. So subscribe. Not because it's a favor to us, because every subscription tells this platform that oversight content like this deserves to be pushed to more people who need to see it. Like this video so it reaches someone who's never heard of the USA Rare Earth deal. Share it with one person who still thinks this stuff doesn't get investigated. Corruption survives on nobody paying attention. Don't give it that. Stay with us. The next clip goes straight to the numbers. Van Hollen used to call this budget a rerun of a bad movie.
So that makes you 1 out of 4 in terms of responses. And so I am going to go back to requests and letters that were not responded to, because you did say at the last hearing with respect to the Epstein affair that you had, quote, nothing to hide. I assume that is still your testimony today. Is that right, Mr. Secretary?
That is right.
So why have you not responded to the letter that Senator Merkley and I sent following up on the last hearing, asking for documents, just to be transparent about the situation and answering the questions that we presented in that letter.
The last time we were together, I agreed and answered every question on that topic with this committee, and I answered each and every topic. I have voluntarily agreed in less than 2 weeks to sit and answer questions on this topic, fully whatever questions are asked of me, voluntarily in less than 2 weeks with your House colleagues. I would ask you if there are any questions that you want me to answer. Please give them to House colleagues, and I am going to answer them all. But I am here today to testify about the budget, and I look forward to discussing the President's budget with you today. But I am volunteering within 2 weeks to answer any and all questions on this topic.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I'm aware of that. We presented you with questions and requests from this committee that have not been responded to. So we're going to have to continue to pursue that. We will follow closely what happens in that proceeding. I hope you will provide them with the materials that we hope to secure here as well. And again, the reason I'm asking this question at this hearing is because we didn't get a response to the letter. No response at all to that earlier letter. The other letter we haven't gotten a response to relates to the issue, as I mentioned, of the U.S. decision, the Commerce Department decision to take a stake, a U.S. government stake in U.S. rare earth, $1.6 billion in federal support. And according to reports, the Rare Earth's own CEO publicly said that this deal originated in a November 2025 conversation between yourself and herself with no formal application, no public solicitation, and no competitive process. Is that accurate?
I met the executives of USA Rare Earth, introduced to me by a gentleman named Ken Moelis, who is a famous banker who has a firm by his own name. And so he brought the deal to us because it is well known that China has weaponized rare earths and critical minerals against the country, and it is very important for the United States to unleash our ability to do rare earths, critical minerals, and magnets. And USA Rare Earth has a mine-to-magnet integrated model, and that was interesting. It was presented to me by Ken Moelis, and then I introduced them to the CHIPS team to pursue the transaction.
Yeah. So, Mr. Secretary, I have no complaint with the decision to take some U.S. ownership stake in exchange for the investment, something that some of us encourage the Biden administration to do in strategic sectors, like this one, certain others. It's more the complete lack of transparency and process under which this deal took place because, you know, before that transaction, I understand that this company's total federal contracting history was worth less than $100,000. It also, as you well know, coincided with the fact that your previous firm, Cantor Fitzgerald, helped arrange the transaction on the other side of the deal, on the private investment side, which raises considerable conflict of interest concerns. So can you respond to the letter? Would you respond to the letter by the end of this month that we sent that lays out some of these questions?
I will take another look at the letter and see if we can work together to resolve your issues.
I would appreciate that, Mr. Secretary, because it would, you know, again, I want to look at this year's budget too. And the challenge we've got here is when we present you questions, the Chairman mentioned some of the things he's asked about, and we get no answers. That's a real problem. And it means that we are going to spend more time focusing on the things that you didn't respond to when we want to focus on the future.
Duration, 2 minutes 2 seconds. Payoff, Van Hollen lists line by line, that this is the exact same set of eliminations and cuts Congress already rejected on a bipartisan basis a year earlier, while consumer sentiment sits at a 74-year survey low and tariffs have cost American families an average of $1,700 each. Segment 4, Narration. The number Van Hollen drops almost in passing, $166 billion, deserves to sit for a second, because it's not a projection, or an estimate about the future. It's what Van Hollen told the committee tariffs have already cost the American people, translating to roughly $1,700 per family, money families have not gotten back. He said that in the same breath, as noting GDP growth had slowed to 0.5% in the final quarter of the prior year, inflation had just hit a 2-year high of 3.3%, and the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, a survey that has run continuously for 74 years, through the 2008 financial crisis and the pandemic, had fallen to its lowest reading ever recorded. Lower than the worst of the Great Recession. Lower than the worst of COVID-era inflation. Against that backdrop, the FY 2027 budget proposes eliminating the Economic Development Administration, the Minority Business Development Agency, and the Manufacturing Extension Partnership entirely, while cutting NIST's operating budget by roughly 54%, NOAA by roughly 27%, and the International Trade Administration by roughly 25%, even as, by Lutnick's own account elsewhere in this hearing, the trade enforcement caseload BIS is handling is climbing. This is not a new proposal. It is, almost line for line, the same set of cuts the administration proposed the year before, which the committee rejected on a bipartisan vote, because members from both parties concluded it would undermine the exact competitiveness the administration says it wants to build. This is also the same hearing room where Lutnick spent his opening statement citing hundreds of billions of dollars in private semiconductor and energy investment, Micron's $200 billion, TSMC's $165 billion, Texas Instruments' $60 billion, as evidence the administration's approach is working. Van Hollen's argument isn't that those investments aren't real. It's that you cannot simultaneously claim credit for an innovation boom and zero out the agencies, NIST's metrology and standards work, the trade offices catching unfair foreign competition, the regional programs that get small manufacturers connected to that boom in the first place, that make the boom possible outside of a handful of headline megaprojects. That contradiction is what the next clip goes directly into, the deal that put Lutnick's own family on the other side of the table from the federal government he runs.
Leadership on that topic was very important, and we are working hard to make sure that we are integrating our information and our data with those maps so they can be the best they can be.
Have you had, I guess, a positive experience in reaching out to the other federal agencies and trying to make sure that it is harmonized, though?
I think that's true. I think we feel good about it. I will weigh back in again and we can have a conversation about it, but what's come up to me has been positive so far. I haven't heard anything otherwise.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fisher, thank you. Senator Van Hollen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to some of the efforts of the Bureau of Industry and Security. And the request in the budget is to double the BIS appropriation, and it's something that I support. I want to, though, bring up a conversation we had a while ago regarding what's known as the affiliates rule, right? The affiliates rule was put in place by the administration to prevent China from, or Chinese companies from evading American export controls on chips and AI by creating subsidiaries or other entities. It was essentially designed to close loopholes. And it was something that I thought was a good idea. Unfortunately, was then traded away or terminated by the Trump administration. At least for a year, it was suspended. I think it was suspended this last November for 1 year. So my question is, if we're going to provide these additional funds to BIS to undertake this kind of work, Can you commit that we will reinstate the affiliates rule to try to prevent the export of high-end U.S. technology to China, including for potential use by the Chinese military?
Thank you. Our trade relationship with China is very complex. It's led by President Trump and his relationship with President Xi, but there is a trade team led by Secretary Bessent and Ambassador Greer who are focused on that, and I focus on the rest of the world. So, you know, the idea that there is balance to figure that out, I agree that the affiliates rule is a smart thing for the United States of America to consider, but it is part of the balance of that full trade agreement, which those other leaders in our administration are driving, and I am part of that team.
Well, Mr. Secretary, it's interesting because I think I mentioned before that when I ask other members of the administration, they say to ask the other guy. And so we get into this circle and no answers because everybody
Here
I
is what
talk to
actually
agrees that
happened
we
in
should
this room.
apply the affiliates rule.
A sitting Commerce Secretary told
but
a Senate committee,
we have not
under
yet
his own
reinstated
name,
it.
that
Let
a
me
rule
turn to an
designed to
issue
stop
on
Chinese
which,
companies from using Shell subsidiaries to buy restricted American chip technology is a smart thing for the United States of America to consider. Then, in the same breath, he told them he isn't the one who can bring it back. That's Bessent, that's Greer, that's someone else's lane. Van Hollen's response wasn't rhetorical. It was documentary. Everybody I talked to agrees that we should apply the affiliates rule, but we have not yet reinstated it. That is not a disagreement about policy. That is a cabinet secretary describing, on the record, an administration where responsibility for a national security decision has been passed around so many hands that nobody currently owns it, while the one-year suspension clock, which started in November 2025, keeps running. Layer that on top of what came before it. The same secretary, who says he has nothing to hide, on Epstein, has now let 2 separate written requests go unanswered for months. The same secretary, whose department structured a $1.6 billion stake in a company with a 6-figure contracting history, also happened to let that exact deal put $1.5 billion in private fundraising fees through the firm his own sons now run. And when asked directly to respond to a bipartisan oversight letter about it, his answer was to promise, again, that he'd take another look. The same budget that zeroes out the manufacturing and trade programs Congress already told him not to touch is the one he's bringing back, for a second try, while the tariffs he defends have already cost American families $1,700 apiece that they haven't gotten back. None of this requires speculation. Every figure in this package, the $1.6 billion, the $1.5 billion, the $166 billion, the 54% and 27% and 25% cuts, the one-year suspension of the affiliates rule, is on the public record, most of it confirmed by Lutnick's own words in this hearing room. What Van Hollen exposed isn't a gaffe. It's a pattern: stonewall the letters, defer the accountability, and hope the next hearing is far enough away that nobody remembers the last unanswered question. It wasn't. And now it's on tape.